I am recording this video with the new mic that I showed you guys a couple of days ago, so we'll see how the video goes. Let's start. Good morning, fellas. I hope you're doing very well today. My name is Janek Z Arts, and today on this day, this tutorial, we're going to learn how to draw trees and vegetation. So this is going to be a lot shorter than the last video I did. I'm very sorry for that. I didn't expect it to be that long. But yeah, we'll see how this goes. So today I'm going to show you how to draw like basic trees with leaves, and also I'm going to show you how to draw trees that have like some kind of spruce-like leaf configuration. And also I'm going to show you how to draw grass and some kind of flowers. So we'll see how that goes. And thank you guys so much for such support on my last shot and also my last video. I can't thank you enough. So yeah, let's start this video. Okay, now again, as I did last time, I'm going to use the program Open Canvas 7, which you can guys get on Steam. I will always say that at the beginning of the video. So yeah, let's just get into it. First of all, drawing trees. The thing is with trees that you don't really have like one specific rule that you should follow, okay? When you draw trees, like most of the time, people that attempt to do this just develop their own art style in the future, and as the time goes on, they just like kind of stick to their own like way of drawing, okay? But I am going to show you the one of the most popular ways that you can draw trees, which I use on the daily, and every time when I draw any kind of like grass, trees, anything like that, I always stick to this. And you can also see that in my future or maybe past videos when I drew the house that you guys had a couple days ago. So yeah, let's just start. First of all, a lot of people, when they draw trees, they start off with a very straight, like log, yeah, and their leaves a lot of times look like this. Now, this is very good for like some kind of cartoony drawings, when you have, for example, some kind of scenes from maybe TV shows or something like that. But if you want to focus on anything that is maybe, let's say, realistic or anything like that, then this isn't very good. And this is because trees have a lot of like leaves that just go like this, so to say, and doesn't look very good when you draw something like that. This could be used in a cloud if you're drawing something realistic, but if you're in the long run, you shouldn't do this really for trees. So I'm going to show you how you can improve that by doing a simple drawing of a tree. So yeah, let's start. First of all, starting off with like the basic tree trunk, I always do something like this when I just draw some random lines like this and then try to basically copy it on the other side, okay? So something like that. So there we go, we have a little bit of a tree trunk, as you can see. Let me just kind of widen this so that it looks a bit better. Okay. And now when it comes to the branches, when you have trees that have, for example, a very big like leaf pile, so to say, then your branches are almost always going to go up. So you just draw some very like curvy lines like this. And then from your branches, you also can draw some smaller lines that are just going to go up and not really interfere with each other. Unless you're doing something that, for example, you have a tree that has no leaves at all, if you like have some kind of drawing that is maybe placed in winter or something, then you can end your branches right there. You don't have to really draw that much of them. Now, when it comes to leaves, my tactic, and tactic that I see a lot of people doing, is just drawing like very random lines that are not really like well done, not very, let's say, like organized or anything like that, but they work very well with drawing trees. And this is because Leaves can tangle, leaves can interfere with each other, leaves can sometimes even be stuck on places they shouldn't be. So, if you're drawing trees that have normal leaves, this is one of the best ways and tactics to do so. So, as you can see, I have finished my sketch of this tree, and as I told, you have all of those lines that look very random, very unorganized, very like chaotic, but when it comes to leaves, it just works. So you have this, and that looks good. And now, when it comes to shading trees, like for example, if you have a source of light, let's say here, and you want to kind of just make it so that it lights up this tree, then very good way to do this is make little spots that you can like kind of separate with other leaves. So let me just draw some spots right there. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 spots. And now, when your source of light is right there, then you can just fill in those spaces, those little, let's say, boxes of leaves. Okay, and this one. And maybe also we can kind of shade the inside a little bit darker so that it looks like we have a lot of trees like in the back or something. Okay, that looks good. And now, when it comes to the leaves in the back, for example, these ones, then you can also do the same thing as we did here, which is just shading a little bit of a darker tone that looks like this. And let's say let's darken it a bit here, and here, something like this, and here. Okay, so now we have those boxes filled in, but to make it look like a little bit better, we can also draw a couple more leaves so that it looks like this tree is like maybe not infested, but like covered to the brim with trees, okay? And now we have our leaves shaded, but what about the trunk and the overall shape of the tree? The general idea is that when the source of light is here, then this side lights up. So this side will be shaded much darker than this one because we have a light source that's coming right there. So I'm going to make this like maybe not the default one, but the like main trunk shaded like this so that it looks like this side is only being lit up. Okay, and there we go. So this looks good. And when it comes to these branches, you can basically do the same thing. Let me just show you how it looks like this. Or you could also, when you have some branches that are kind of hiding in these leaves, you can do something like this, where it basically lights up the shade where the trunk meets the sky, let's say. So my tip would be that if you have branches that are pretty much exposed to the overall ground and maybe the air, then very good idea is to like shade the same way you shape this one. But if you have branches that are very like covered in trees and just go into the leaves themselves, then you could also shade them like this. When there are leaves, you can just make it very dark. And if you have something that is a bit lighter, then just light it up. And there we go. We have shaded our tree right there. And then, how will the shadow work? So, my advice is when you're not doing anything that is like very professional, just do something like this. A lot of times when you have some light source that is kind of covered or maybe like closed off or something like that, then you're not going to see like the full shadow that is like emerging like this. But if you want to, for example, have something that is a bit more professional, then you can always do something like this, where you like measure out the angle and the overall placement of the shadow, so that you have basically the idea of where this is going. And just basically do like this, something like this, sorry. And now when it comes to the leaves, my advice would be to just do exactly the same thing, but this time we're going to straighten these leaves out a little bit, okay? So we have this, and this looks a little bit more organized than those leaves that we have here. So when shading leaves, you can always just go a little bit more organized than you have in your tree, so that it looks kind of better. But you could always also do something like this, where you have, for example, a kind of tree that is like very covered and like leaves are just hanging from it. You could always do something like this, where you just do basically the same thing, and you have these leaves that just go very unorganized and very like chaotic, so to say. This shade isn't very good, but at the end of the video I am going to make a little drawing of a small forest that we're just going to make shading that looks a little bit better. Okay, so this is basically the guide of drawing trees that are leaved. But what about drawing trees that, for example, you see on, I don't know, like Christmas trees or something like that? Let me show you. Okay, so let's start. When drawing like trees that, for example, you see, I don't know, in like spruce forest or something like that, the idea is pretty similar, but this time we're going to do a full tree trunk. And notice how this time it kinda shrinks up as we're going up. And this is because tree trunks aren't like cylinders, they kind of get smaller as we're going up. So when you're drawing trees like this, then you're basically going to make them a little bit, let's say, shorter and wider. Wider, I mean like narrow. Oh, yeah, there we go. Okay, so that looks good. And now let's just draw a little barrier so that we separate it from the ground. And now, when it comes to the overall leaves, I know I shouldn't call them, but I don't really know what they're called in English. The idea is that you go like this, like a triangle. But you don't do something like this, because that doesn't look very professional. But you can start by doing this. Okay. And notice how my way is pretty similar to the trees that we drew basically a second ago. But you can also start at the bottom so that you can measure out how wide do you want your tree to go. So I am going to do that, and I am going to kind of make my end line, let's say. So we have something like this, and now we need to make sure that we're following this line so that our tree looks realistic. So this is done. And now, I know at the beginning when we were drawing, I kind of followed the same idea, but notice that some of them are a bit more pointy. And this is because you don't really have leaves on spruce trunks or anything like that. You basically have like little spikes, let's say. So I am going to draw those a little bit more pointier than my tree that we drew a couple of minutes ago. Like if you, for example, start drawing like this, don't worry, because trees can look good in this style, even those trees. But I would recommend maybe drawing a little bit more of a pointy shape. Okay, so there we go. We have a little scenery of a tree. And now let's draw some lines that like maybe indicate branches, let's say out. This doesn't really look that good, but everyone is learning, even me, I know, shocking. A lot of times you're going to see some people that do something like this, basically. So this is basically the general idea of drawing trees that are very pointy and just go straight like this. Okay, so now we have this finished, and let's shade it a bit. So I am going to follow the same idea that we did a little bit earlier, but this time I'm going to draw those horizontal lines, okay? Now, this looks good, so let me just finish it up. Okay, so we have this finished, and by the general shape and the angle of the shading, you can guess that the light source is kinda, let's say, right here. So now I am going to follow the same exact idea that I did just a couple minutes ago and draw the tree trunk like this, so that the darker side doesn't really get that much light, but the side that is very well lit gets as much light as possible. And also, when you're doing that, you can also kind of darken this side so that it looks like your tree is going basically with the shadow. Okay, so we have this finished, and now let's just finish it up by doing the ground shadow of our whole tree. And again, if you're doing something casually, you don't have to finish the whole tree up, but if you want to, you can do something like this, where you draw those pointy shapes like this, and then just fill this in. Okay, so we have this tree finished up, and this is basically it for the general idea of doing trees and tree trunks and stuff like that. Now, I know there are a lot of types of trees. Some for example, fall like this. Some have very like wide and long trunks. Some of them have, for example, like very long and very thin branches that just go out in an infinite loop. If you guys want me to, I could also make a tutorial, for example, on how to draw maybe like acacia trees on some type of bonsai or something like that. But I'm not going to do this in this video because this is going to take too much time and it is already very late. So no, I am not doing that. Okay, so we have trees finished up, and now let's get, for example, what can we do? Let's go to the grass. Okay, I cleared this canvas, and now let's go to grass. Now let's draw a little ground like this. And now when it comes to grass, a lot of people will do something like this, when you have just spikes that are coming up from the ground. And now, honestly, in my opinion, this looks good. If you do something like this, then you shouldn't really change that much because this already looks pretty well. But if you want to, for example, improve a couple of things in your art style, then I would more recommend do grass almost the same way as we did trees. So for example, you have a little bit of a dirt path, and you have grass that just goes like this. And now we can also do some additional like blades of grass. Okay, there we go. Let me finish this up by making a sort of a path maybe or something like that. Okay, so that looks good. Alright, and now when it comes to shading grass, we do the same way as expected, as we did last time. We just pick a couple of maybe corners or boxes or something, and just basically draw like this. And there we go, there is our grass. Now, you can also do this, I mean shading, where you just pick one like layer and basically do something like this, where you have, let me draw this so you can see it a bit better. You have something like a line. Oh, there we go. And you, for example, divide your grass. That, like, imagine this is your line where the grass ends. You divide it into sections. And your first section will be the darkest. Okay. Your next section will be a little bit lighter. And your third section, or the last one, will either be not shaded at all or just very lightly. Okay, there we go. And when you have, for example, a very big path of grass or something, and it is separated by some kind of walkway or something, then this technique is very good. This can also work when you're, for example, doing, I don't know, a very big, let's say, field that has a lot of grass, let's say we have a field right there, and then you, for example, just make grass right here. Okay, there we go. And you just basically shade two of the sides so that it looks like, for example, very well cut. Okay, so this is the general idea of drawing grass. And let's also throw in a couple of flowers, maybe. So when you draw flowers, make sure you always start at the bottom, and this is going to be a very thin line. Then I know there's going to be a lot of flowers that are going to have some leaves, and the best way to do this, in my opinion, to draw leaves on flowers, is basically to draw little triangles that go up like this. And notice how I drew on this one a lot more leaves that there are normally on other flowers, okay? And this is because some flowers are going to have a lot more leaves, some flowers are going to have no leaves at all. So yeah, this general idea of drawing like little blades. And now when it comes to the actual flower itself, you can always start out by doing the little circle, like we always see people do. And then let's just finish this off by drawing the details. And when you draw flowers, your best tactic is to basically, for example, I know I am not doing this right now because I've been drawing flowers a lot recently, so I learned how to like basically do this. But if you want to draw it very accurately, let's say you have this flower, and then you can also draw a guideline on where your flower leaves, I don't know how to call them, go. This guideline helps a lot because you can kind of see where this goes, and you can also maybe make this look a little bit more realistic. Okay, and that looks good. So we have this flower right here, and now let's draw, for example, a rose. So drawing roses is kind of simple. You just basically draw a couple of rectangles that go in like a circular pattern, and in the inside you draw a couple of circles right there. And there we go, we have a simple rose. So that looks good. And now we can also do a flower that has leaves that go up a little bit like this. That just closes off, so to say. And this looks kind of like a maybe square flower, I know. But for example, if you're drawing something like a flower that is pretty big and you want it to look good, you can also do the same thing, draw a guideline, and then just basically follow your guideline like this, and draw your flower leaves right here. So there we go, we have a simple, for example, tulip, and yeah, this is basically the guide of drawing grass and flowers. So now, as I do always, and I will do always in my videos, I am going to draw a little scene with trees. Like, let's make me do a forest, and we're going to use all the techniques that we learned in this video. So let's go. I am going to draw a little bit of a ground, first of all. Okay, and now let's just throw in a couple of trunks so that we know where we are living off. Okay, that looks good. Right here, right there. Okay, and so we have everything. Okay, so we have all of those trunks right there. And now I'm going to basically draw a little bit of a mixed forest. Some of them are going to be a little bit of a triangle shape, and some of them are just going to be normal trees. So enjoy the time lapse, I guess. Okay, so now that we have a couple of trees that we just drew, let's go on to the shading part, and at the end I'm going to trace it with my pen brush. So let's go. Hey guys, this is Editing Janek here. I am sorry if I sound a little bit maybe under the weather in this video, but I was recording pretty late and I also was very tired since I have been drawing for the past 3 hours. But everything's fine, don't worry. But so yeah, let's just enjoy the time lapse. Okay, so I finished everything up And I would say that this is basically done. So we used everything that we just learned. I have some grass right there. I have some pointy trees, I could say. I have some normal trees with normal leaves. And I did a little bit of shading so that you can also see like this scene in a, let's say, final outcome. So yeah, this is basically it for today's tutorial. Okay, so we finished everything up, and thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe because this helps out a lot with the channel. And also make sure to leave out ideas for maybe future tutorials. And yeah, so yeah, next out. Peace.